David Del Alfred, the breakthrough. Either yeah, it's okay. That's short. Very good, very good time. Yeah, the family.
When does what is the shir usually Sunday nights? What is it on which
Parsha.
topics? On what?
The Parsha.
On the
The
Parsha.
Rebbe analyzes Rashi's.
Rashi's. Good. Good.
Usually the previous Parsha or the coming Parsha.
It's usually, as Barrett said, on the speed of the parsha.
Okay. And then Tuesday night is Gemara.
Yeah.
And Wednesday night.
No, Tuesday night is Shabbat.
No, Monday night.
Shabbat.
Monday night.
Monday night. It's Monday.
Which part of Shabbos?
Right now.
I shouldn't really continue in a Seder so that you can continue for this.
But okay, every year usually goes on.
Well, just that thing.
And let's say you went to goes back.
Good. Okay. Yeah.
When you go.
Doesn't work well.
It's not only yours. Now, Wednesday, usually stops, of course, this week. So usually the show would have a Farbrengen with whatever mimer goes with it. So
Okay. Good.
that's what I
Wednesday night might be really we'll see how long we could cover things in about this topic today. So we might have time to say a story of how the Yud Tam was coming this week. Probably a Pearson mission. You probably have never heard it before. So
we can't.
And if not, then probably Wednesday night during the Farbrengen, I'll say over many stories. Because my grandfather wrote a memoir of his memories.
What was it called?
It's unedited. It's not printed. At least not all of it. For sure, not all of it. So maybe I'll say over some of the things that are in that.
Today, Shir Lefuah Shlemo Daniel ben Tamar.
Amen.
Shlemo.
Daniel ben
Tamar.
Damat. Amen. Anyone here has made sourdough? Anyone here has made sourdough at home?
But my sister and my two nieces, they have a whole business of sourdough and coming in my neighborhood. I can't hear.
Yeah, that's not healthy when you have bread that's coming out of your ears.
No, the whole nicer with the
Or
sourdough.
maybe they don't really know how to mix, so the flour gets all over their faces. Maybe that would be an issue too. Okay. So what happened was during the onset of COVID, many people were at home, and people don't like to just sit around and look at the walls, or at least not for that long of a period of time. So people had new hobbies that they could do at home too. So one of the things, you could have a fermented tomatoes and fermented cucumbers and all these probiotics. So one other thing is called sourdough. Now the issue is that sourdough looks very different than regular challah, regular dough. Usually, what happens is when you mix the dough with active yeast and eggs and sugar and all these things that you need for challah, you see, like in a short period of time, it actually rises. Okay, so and everyone grew up with this. Okay, so this is chametz, right? But then, and you can't have chametz, leavened bread. But But then you look at sourdough, and okay, maybe it rises a little bit, and even when it rises, it's only rising. Mostly, it's only rising in the oven itself while it's actually baking.
It's like what it is, sourdough. Get started.
Okay, so sourdough is yeast is just flour, water, and a little bit of salt.
No yeast?
The yeast is just the yeast is just flour and water that was sitting for a long period of time on its own, and then it's brought in, and then it's added into the mix.
They have like a master.
Yeah, it's called the sourdough starter.
Yeah.
And even the starter takes a long period of time to get it working. See, because whenever you have flour, let's say 100 grams of flour, 100 grams of water, and it sits, you mix it and then it sits. So after about 12 hours, it's going to start. It's going to rise to about half a month. Half. It's going to rise double as how high it was on its own.
Even with no yeast.
Right, but then it becomes right. But then that only happens after you've been doing it for many times. I mean, the first time it's only going to rise a little bit. Then you take a little bit of that, let's say 25 grams, and you put it into a new batch, and then it gets a little higher. And then you do it again, another 12 hours later, another. So obviously, if you're home all day and all night, okay, so 12 hours here, 12 hours over there, like you're anyways at home. So you can always take care of it. Take care of the starter. If you're working 9 to 5, it's a little harder because you're not at home. Who's gonna change the starter? Okay, so what? No, it becomes the actual yeast. It's so you mix it and then after it could take weeks. It takes months till it gets a really really good starter. Okay, good. But if you look back in the Chumash, well, I mean, I've learned many times sa'oir that you're not allowed to have sa'oir b'vatechem on Pesach.
That's yeast, right?
That okay, it's yeast, but really it's sourdough. Sa'oir is not active dry yeast. Like or okay, then it's not like the yeast that you buy in the store. It's sourdough. That's one you're not allowed to have sourdough in your home on Pesach. You're not allowed to own sourdough over Pesach.
Excuse me, I can late. So what is a sour? What is sourdough?
Sourdough
How-
is
how
just
is it
plain flour and water with a little bit of salt.
So that's the connates.
Some comments, we don't bake dinner.
So you would think, what is leavened? Why is it chametz if it doesn't have, if it's not leavening, if it's not like I don't know, fallow dough that rises within a short period of time? What's rising already?
Well, if they have flour and water, it rises automatically.
Very good.
So that's
Very good.
So that's sourdough.
Yes,
So that's connates.
right.
Okay, now the thing is, Torah said, connates machmeset. Now, machmeset is an a transitive verb, it does something else. Connates by itself. Machmeset means something that makes other things connates, as if it's not connates itself. Like if sourdough is just regular dough, it's flour and water, and it became connates. So there's no difference between that and regular connates. I don't understand.
Right, but people don't know what sourdough. We have to first figure out what sourdough is, then we'll know.
That's what I'm asking. Yeah.
Right. What's the whole thing when you go to a matzah bakery and you find out, hey, after 18 minutes, oh my goodness, it's chametz. What do you put yeast inside? No, there's just flour and water.
The amount of time it's
Right. Right. Meaning you don't need to put yeast, just the flour and water itself is already causing it
It
to
naturally rises.
right.
Yeah,
Because
so from what I've heard from various people, maybe it's not correct, that sourdough is It's regular chametz, but it's left over to the point that it has yeast in it. It has in its properties to make more dough chametz.
Right, that's the starter. That's the starter, which is old, which is which is old flour and water that has, with so many times that you've mixed flour and water into it, it has so many properties of yeast that just a little bit of it is already going to cause other flour and water to rise a lot. Meaning, just if you put flour and water by itself, okay, so it's going to rise enough for halachically for it to be chametz, but it's not going to be to the level of what you would call a piece of bread. It's going to be like matzah with a little bit more. Good. So here we see a few issues that start with this. So there's a few things. First, you mentioned that your family member has a whole business revolved around that. So my guess is that they are baking their bread within their home, right? So here we get into a whole question about if we need a hasher for homemade products.
Yeah, sell it.
Really, you would ask, okay, do you even need a hasher in the first place?
Only if
You would
sell it,
think,
right?
but right, if you sell it. See, usually what you go to a person's home for a Shabbos meal, and there are actual halachas. If you're actually allowed to even ask the balabayas, how did they make their food? Are you even allowed to? Are you even allowed to not eat their food? Like it's not respectful,
Either you trust
and also
your belts, either you rely on their conscience or your belts.
right, right. Some people think that their religiosity or their frumkeit is about between them and Hashem. Like how frum are they going to be in certain halachas? So, for example, kashrus is like something that's going to make them feel like they're doing what Hashem wants. So they're going to be even more frum than someone else, and even more and more and more to that level. But the issue is that there are many parts of Torah that have to do between a person and their fellow human being.
Yeah, but it's only everything somebody's house. But to trust them, well, to know it's a separation out of the question.
That's Pashut Menschlichkeit, right? Right,
Once you're there,
right,
once you're
right.
there,
But the inner, you're saying very good. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying.
First, I want you to come over for a meal, and you see the person show every day. And you know they're good people.
Right,
But then you should have common sense with these knowledge and to say, hey, I trade big with you to people.
right,
Right. Yeah, you have to accept the invitation, you accept the fact the person.
right.
or it's kosher style.
Right.
The same thing. I'll give you an example. My great grandfather's one of them was the Delta Rebbe.
Okay.
His brother was here. Went back to Europe, he's clean shaven. So
Uh-huh.
the way I heard was he went to somebody's house
Yeah.
for a bottle of
What
wine.
do you want?
He said, "Look at the Rebbe, can I trust this guy with a bottle of wine? And he doesn't have beer. So the Rebbe, the answer, yes, you need to trust him.
Right. Right. Okay. So it's
Right, decent
right,
person.
right.
And then I think.
It's a very important thing to be a decent person, of being a nice person, and it's nice also to find people like that you can be in contact with.
You don't saw somebody else or somebody.
I don't know if that has to do with their conscience.
For example, in the film where, let's make sure it's no deeper, like your phone.
Well, I've seen that.
Don't go over there.
Right. 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 But then, right. Very good. So then what happens? So now you have food on the table by the Shabbos table and you're eating it good. But then somehow the status quo, at least, is that when someone starts selling food, and it's selling in the stores, okay, so where's the hechsher? But what do you mean? Like it's the same guy. It's the same person that's made the food and you're not getting him nuts. You're going to sit by his table, but then now he's making money off the food, and then now you somehow need some other Rav
Well, you
to
may have
come.
workers that are not even Jewish.
First of all, well, they're it's at home. If it's in a
Well, I meant in the store.
right, I'm saying if it's at home,
They have a actually, they have, no.
right. So then what's at home? This same person that you go to eat at their meal, that same person makes extra food, or maybe if you didn't eat enough of their food by the Shabbos meal, so then they want to sell it on the open market after Shabbos,
Very much.
right? That's what they.
That person, what happened, he has a plate, you know, it brings in a professional cook. And a professional cook, they want to eat certain oil on the side of the house, good for them.
Right. So
Whatever you
right. That's also for themselves. That it's important when someone has a maid at home that's helping out in the kitchen. It's important to be on top of the maid to for the maid to know what's right and also to be a trustworthy person that they'll do things correct.
Rabbi, my
The silverware, take up the house for reason, that they want you to do.
Right. But then also you need to, when it comes to kashrus, it's important also to realize that halacha has, yes, there are some chumras that you wouldn't know unless you learned the halachas, but then there's also some fullers that you wouldn't know unless you know the halachas well.
Rabbi,
Like there's hardly a time that if you ask a shaila in kashrus from a rav, that the rav won't make it sound like it's not as bad as you would have originally thought. It's hardly a time. Meaning you would think, oh, they need a kasha this, a kasha that. The food is not kosher. What about a table, the cutlery, and this and that and that? And then when the Rav asks you all the details of the issue, then the Rav will say, okay, so this if you want, okay, so kosher this thing if you want, but all the other thing, it's okay.
Case where somebody may not trust collide. Vice versa.
Right,
But,
right.
I've got somebody, this is over 100 years ago, they're.
You don't look that old. You look very young. You look like a spring chicken.
And well, when they were over 100 years ago in Europe, the Jews were living in exile. They had one place to trade. They found a place. She got from my town. They went to that house. What's the old school got married?
Okay.
And but there was what is needed to house and not send trust them. And you have to be breaking the dishes. You have to trade on the big plate. So the question of it is not as well. So like they just don't be trail, but since we
Right.
don't eat house.
Right. And also there's, let's say on Pesach, there are people that even if they're going to go eat by other people's houses during the year, but on Pesach, they have the custom to not eat at other people's homes. That's, there's always,
Rabbi, my daughter in Chicago, she make a lot of dips and she sell.
yes.
The beginning it was okay, and then people say, "What is hashgacha?" So the shul gave her hashgacha, and now she's making sourdough and you name it, all different salatim. But she doesn't have help because she doesn't trust her. She do everything herself. She buy the best, and she sell it in good money. She's making very well for that.
Very nice.
But the shul gave her hashgacha, and they come and check in kitchen, all the ingredients. And
the key of a house.
no, I'm the only one with it.
Depends on the hashkota, what their policy is. Okay, so let me get to the reason, what's the cutoff. So I know for myself, I make sourdough almost every Shabbos for a while, and I know for myself that people. Okay, so then people like the sourdough. Like I hear from people that either when we bring it over to people's homes or people have it at home, at our home,
No test.
and they really they think it's really good. So then they're like, hey, let me make it like why don't you start selling it? So then I think, how much time it takes me to put together this like challah. It's not even, there's no like what? Okay, so you'll pay me $20 for a challah. It's not even. It's like, what's $20 already? It's like
Takes
it,
more than
it
two
takes a
hours.
lot. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Unless, okay, if I would if I would make it as my a full day occupation, okay, so then I could figure out how to make it feasible, and then make many sourdoughs, and then okay, so then I would be able to come up with a price. But this like it doesn't even make any sense. The whole thing in the first place. So then what? Then what pops into my mind is that, okay, if I'm going to sell it for $20, so then now I'm going to try to figure out a way how to make it as easy as possible for me that it's actually feasible in the first place. So then what am I going to look for? I'm going to look for the cheapest flour and whatever. That's just for uh, price for the prices itself of the actual items that I'll be using. But then on the other hand, what if there's some halachic shaila that has to do with the sourdough? So if it's my own sourdough, okay, so I'm gonna have the sourdough or not. Like if there's a shaila, okay, so I'll ask a rav, and if the Rav tells me that I can't have the sourdough, okay, so good. It's not that big of a deal. Okay, so I won't have sourdough that Shabbos. But if there's 100 people waiting, if there's bakeries waiting for me, then it's going to be very hard for me to just say no. I'm not going to have the sourdough. Why? Even why? Because there's a lot of things hanging on the balance of this halachic shiloh. Now, a simple thing: sourdough in an oven. Okay, so if usually I'm probably going to make it on Friday. So then, it's why? Because the more fresh it is, the better it is, especially if it's hot. Like you imagine how good if you buy it in a bakery, if you buy it from your grocery store, it's not going to be hot. It's going to be, let's say, a day old, 2 days old. So it's not going to be that fresh. They tell you to cover it with water, like sprinkle water, and then put it in the oven again for a few minutes. But still, it's not like it's right out of the oven. So if you make it on Friday and it's at home, so you also need to make your chicken and your fish. So and you can't and okay, so you have it covered for a little bit, but you can have it uncovered. Now, what if someone by mistake has the chicken uncovered? So then you have a shaila about fleischiks. You have uncovered challah and uncovered chicken. So even if you're going to say, okay, there's a reason to be lenient. It's not that big of a deal, anyways, because it's anyways it's a unique sourdough, unique challah that you're not just going to have for usually people that are going to buy sourdough. It's probably going to be on Shabbos. So it's anyways going to be during a fleishig meal, and you'll put it on the bag or whatever. But these are shilas that if the shilish says, if the shilah has an answer that you can't have the sourdough or there's an issue with the sourdough, so then you won't be able to sell it. And then what? You're not going to have the sourdough that week, and then you're going to lose all your customers because they know that you won't have it every week. They'll go to someone else. So these are
Sourdough is a motzi?
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Unless you cut it into pieces of oil, make it a French toast or
You
something.
can make it with apple.
French toast is probably also yeah. You can make babka. This
You're a big maven. You can make it with apple juice instead of water.
that I don't. That's a good question.
I don't know.
That's a very
You
good
can make it
question.
with apple juice. It's
Because
not a motzi.
you would think it needs water, but maybe you need to have a scientist to tell you if apple juice. Maybe apple juice is from concentrate. From concentrate
make
is
one.
probably anyways water. It's not the
This
real.
week, make one and try it. You'll be the first one.
Yeah. So okay. So what is it? So first of all, so what happens? Okay. So therefore, it makes sense why you need a hashgacha because even though it's at home and you trust the person very well, but as soon as you bring money into the situation, it becomes a much harder issue.
They gave it ever.
It's a big deal. It's a very big deal. These things because the whole business is down the drain if you have to bring into halacha into the into as halacha doesn't there is sometimes that halacha does care about the money issue if there's a hefsim and ruba, which might make it okay, but there's a lot of times that no, and that's it. You have to just the buck stops here. You have to follow halacha, and in a work at work, it's harder. It's harder to put that into the equation. Okay, so that's why it makes sense to have the hatcher. But then another issue: what happens about functions? You have, let's say, a dinner or a chasana, a bar mitzvah, something that might have there's a hechsher of all food that is part of that hall. But then what happens is that there is a someone that sets up what is it called, a party planner that sets up the dinner, sets up the bar mitzvah, the l'chaim, the
Lately, they have extra of a party event planner.
right.
Pretty much.
Right. So now this party planner, one of their niches is to find the best exotic type of food, let's say little cookies that have special lettering and all and all these stuff that if you would buy it in a store it would cost a lot of money. Why? Because each piece takes such a long time that it's not even you're not going to buy it in a massive bakery. Massive bakeries are not even going to do these little I don't know, fill in chocolate.
Yeah.
Fill in chocolate made in that looks exactly like tefillin in a what is it called, in a mold, chocolate mold of a tefillin. All these things that you need tender. It needs TLC to make it correct, make it well. So who's going to take care of it is going to do is someone at home. Is anyone's at home? Okay, so they'll take care. They'll make this. But then the issue is that every party planner, what's their niche, is to find all the best of these people that are making these things. But if everyone knows who these people are, so then the other party planner is going to find them, and then they'll make their little chocolate filling just as good because it's from the same person. And besides, that person that's making the filling only has a certain amount that are able to make because they're at home. They only have one freezer or one oven. Like they can't make a crazy amount. And if every party planner finds out, so then there's no specialty of that party planner because they don't have all the things. So one of the thing would be is to get the best sourdough. So if you buy it in a store, so it's not going to be as good, or if you find the real good bakeries, okay, so they'll be very good. But if you just buy sourdough from a supermarket, so it's going to be just it might not even look like sourdough, but okay, I guess you can put it on your Shabbos table and say like, oh, it's sourdough. Oh, who wants sourdough? Good. But the real McCoy would be if you would get it from a home. But then what happens is this gets to the point. The hall has a hechsher, and the hechsher wants to know all the food that comes in to know if it's up to their standards. But the party planner brings in food that the party planner doesn't want to say who this person is, who the person made the food, because then everyone else will find out. So then what do? You have the party planner that wants to make wants to be have a specialty, have a niche with finding out who's the best sourdough, but then the Hefsher wants to know that everything is up to their standards. So therefore, it also makes sense from that perspective to even before it gets to the hall, meaning just the people making it at home themselves, they should have a hechsher on their own. So then, when it gets to the party planner themselves will already have that hechsher that says that the party planner is already dealing with people that are making food at home, is already on to that hechsher standard. So then it beats this whole issue of not knowing who the person is. Good. So that's the thing with sourdough. Another thing with sourdough is, like we mentioned a few times, that there's the real, what makes the sourdough special is how good the sourdough starter is. because as good as the starter is, then it will have more yeast content, and then it will rise more. If it doesn't rise that much, so then it's kind of like flat bread. It's not amazing, but the amazing ones are the ones that the starter is very good. But then the way to make it a good starter is if it's done so many times over and over and over again that because it's only, let's say there's 100 grams and 100 grams, 100 to 100, then it rises. And right when it's on the peak of rising, then you take a little bit of that and put it into another batch and you put 100 to 100. And then so the yeast content is compounded on its own from the starters from before. So by the time you get to weeks and months and years later, it has so much yeast content that when it touches the flour and water of the sourdough itself, it's gonna rise to an amazing amount, and then it's gonna look very good, and it's gonna taste very good, and it's gonna be with the way that like on the highest level of a sourdough. But then, if you have sourdough for many years, what do you do for Pesach?
So, not again,
You sell it to a goy. Now, what?
It's not been, it's not the boy, Corey owns it. He had a problem with this point to be passage drill.
He's gonna sell, he's
Right. A few things.
not gonna complete the deal.
Have a lot of fouls. After, stop making, excuse it up.
What?
He said, what happened, you have a lot of sourdough, that's for me. Just don't make sure you go drill it.
Hey, don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't mean the sourdough challah. I mean the starter. The sourdough starter that you want to keep for a long period of time
Yeah.
so that it gets to such a high yeast content that it's there are people that claim that they have it from generations before, and it's a whole cult. Good.
To the starter.
So good. So wait.
The starter is not.
So what do you do? So first of all, we already figured out that sourdough starter is chametz. You're not allowed to own sourdough starter on Pesach. That's first of all. So you can't just let it sit in the fridge and claim, what do you mean? It's not. It's just sitting. It's just flour and water. If you see the sourdough starter that's in a person's fridge, usually if it sits for a long time, it'll be in the fridge. So if you see it, it might be just not even a gram, 2, 3, 10 gram, maybe 25 grams, hardly anything. It looks like nothing. So what do you mean? This is called chametz? So no, first of all, it is very much chametz. They can't just have it lying around. So now, but then the issue is that are you really selling it? First of all, if you, even if you keep it in your fridge, or even if you keep it in the guy's fridge, but you really want it after Pesach, it's not like what's going to happen.
Chametz you sell. If you sell real chametz, then it's no different than
But
real
it's not like technically, in theory, if the non-Jew tells you, you know what, I'll pay you for its worth. I'll pay you $500 for your meat, for the meat that's in your fridge or whatever, for your chametz. Like, okay, I'll sell it to 500. It's not like, what's the difference between the challah that you had a week ago or the cereal that you had a week ago and the cereal from after that you could buy fresh in the store? It's not that big of a difference. But then the sourdough starter, that's what you're going to start over again. It's obsolete. And anyways, the sourdough that you're sitting on it for 100 years is there's no price that you could put on it. Meaning you could sell it to bakeries. Bakeries could sell it to you for an exorbitant amount of money. I mean, could buy it from you for an amazing amount of money. So it's not, the non-Jew is not going to sell it to you. So what's going on? So for sure, those that don't sell their chametz, well, not on Pesach. Obviously, you don't sell chametz on Pesach, but before Pesach, will have an issue with this. But even those that sell chametz, you have to actually it has to actually be not in your psyche. You have to not care about this chametz anymore. So you have to really not. You have to not. It has to not matter during Pesach. So one of the things is that when you have sourdough, you need to feed it. Called feeding. You have to put a little bit of flour and water so that remains active. If it's sourdough that sits, if the starter just sits for a long period of time, it's just going to lose its potency. It's going to become moldy. So you need to continue. So what happens on Pesach? Really, even during Shabbos, what do? So people that are very OCD about these things, oh my gosh, oh my goodness, yeah, what is Shabbos? But really, you could just put it in the fridge. It's not the end of the world. It really is not the end of the world. What's sourdough already? But that with Shabbos. But on Pesach, a whole week. So if you're in the stage of still making the starter to its amazing potency, so then you're right that putting it in the fridge will take away some of the potency that you'll have to sit and feed it for a while. But for those starters, it's not anyways so valuable. So what? If you're sitting for your starter for a month, okay, so you start over again after Pesach. It's not the end of the day, end of the world. It's not in the end of the world that it's going to lose part of its bonus. But if it's there for a long period of time, so then you get the other issue. You get to the other thing that even putting it in the fridge for a week, it's not going to lose its bonus. So it's not like you need to feed the starter during Pesach. But even those that might say like, oh, I need to feed the starter, so now I'm going to sell it to the guy, and then the guy will feed the starter. The problem with that
becomes
first of all, hold on. See, I really see. I see. Good.
becomes goyish.
First of all, you have to really not own any chametz. You can't just, it has to be there, first of all. Secondly, if you're putting in the starter, so then when you're using the starter after Pesach, it's from things that were used even by a goy during Pesach. It has to be. It has to be. Huh?
You trust the non-Jew, not breaking it up. Can't.
Yeah, there's no very good. Right. Besides, right, like you mentioned, that's a good point you're mentioning. That you have to, like, what? They're gonna where is this chametz anyways? It's gonna be in your house anyway. So what's the guy is gonna come and but even if you bring it somewhere else, right? So what they're gonna have access to your chametz, and then after Pesach, you're gonna know that it's kosher. How do you even know? The person you're trusting this person, there's no and you don't have any access. You don't have any access to it because you can't own it. So you don't have any access to it. And then now after Pesach, yeah, that's a very good catch. Yeah. So that's the second one. But then also the starter that you're using after Pesach, it needs to be something that wasn't used even by a guy during Pesach. It needs to be the chametz that you have no access to during Pesach. So now you're going to have, let's say, the pizza that you have. It's a little quieter. Not everyone hears, but the pizza that you buy right after Pesach is not it's not complete new pizza from after Pesach, right?
Yeah, it was in the freezer.
It was the dough. The dough was made before Pesach.
Yeah,
because dough, right? It's right. When you say that you have the best pizzas right after Pesach, it's just because you didn't have pizza. For those that didn't have pizza during Pesach, that's why you think that it's good. But really, if you wait another week, then that pizza will be very good. Why? Because the dough needs to sit. The pizza dough, if you ever make pizza, you have to. It doesn't sit there for a few days, for a few minutes. But then it's not the dough that you have after Pesach.
They have the real pizza right after Passover. Any context though.
Right, because it's just the palate. I hear. But you should just know that it's dough that was sitting either in the fridge or the freezer.
Is that dough chametz?
It is chametz.
It is right.
But it was sold for before Pesach. But that dough itself wasn't made obviously wasn't made by even a non-Jew during Pesach. The day before was obviously not made by even a non-Jew during Pesach. it was made before Pesach. See, so you need to make sure that the dough, that the chametz is not made, the chametz is not made during Pesach. So therefore, getting back to the starter, you have to make sure that that it's not done even by the non-Jew. It can't be fed, as you would call it. It's not able to be fed during Pesach.
Rabbi, this sourdough is good for Sfaradim because they don't make hamotzi
Even
and egg
if
challah.
Ashkenazim make it.
No, I'm saying it doesn't make difference. They make hamotzi only on water challah. They don't make on egg challah.
Yeah.
All the Ashkenazim, of course.
Sfaradim don't make,
In the zone is all year, 7 days.
Sfaradim don't make, motzi
Egg
saying
challah.
on egg mat. No, and egg
It's-
challah also not?
Not egg challah also.
Also not.
No, the sourdough is much healthier also,
Yeah, so they can make hamotzi.
and also tastes much better.
I don't know, but
You just need good teeth. That's all.
But it's hot, yeah. I have trouble. It's sometimes
The crust is real crust. It's not like the crust.
Yeah,
When I was growing
Heavy.
as a little kid, like you would have, we had rye bread. That was like for sandwiches, we would always have rye bread. So then I wouldn't eat the crust because the crust is it's real only the inside. The rye bread crust is not the crust.
So like, you don't get the bake. Every neighbor had a bakery, like 3 blocks of corn or something like that.
Okay,
Remember?
I'm not that old.
I don't know, like 4 blocks a year, Andy J.
Okay.
You'll get a couple of blocks. Well, when you order, right?
right now there's only one.
Oh yeah. There was a special slicer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
I don't know.
So that's.
were the good days.
Good old.
Somebody's house on top of the bakery, why cake?
Uh-huh.
So it's a gift for the guests.
Uh-huh. Okay, so that's the issues with sourdough. Another thing, just the last thing, is during by Lechem Mishnah, as for Challah, there's the question is which one should you have 2 breads on your on the challah board? Which one should you use as the one for hamatzah that you're going to be eating?
The real one or not the real one?
What are the 2 kinds?
So there's 2 of them. There's 2 of them.
Two
So which one is? So
sourdough?
usually, so one of the one, even if you have, let's say, 2 sourdough, but which one? So usually people say the ones that are large, the one that's larger is already more kosher because it's larger. That's what many times if you see, a bulkala, as they say, a bulkala, a small roll, and then a challah, like a braided challah, it's more kosher. So you're going to use the braided challah as more kosher.
Also, what's baked better, you have to make hamotzi on that too.
Right. So very good. Very good. So then with sourdough, sometimes ones that are larger aren't better. It just means that it has more flour, but it's not more it doesn't have more ear inside. It could be larger by width, but not by
Volume.
yeah. Like there's all these issues. So you need to look into what would be better. But also when you cut it, you need to cut it where it's the best part of the challah. Like meaning when you cut the challah, you take off a piece after you say hamaitzi. So usually you just cut off a little bit because it has you cut off like a little bit of the crust or something like that. But you want to get to like the meat or the best part of the challah, and that should be the chashuv, the most precious part, and that's what you're going to be eating. So with sourdough also, you need to you should make sure to cut it in the place that is most eerie. Like if you ever look inside a sourdough, you'll see there's more bubbles. That part is the most tasty and the most chashuv, so that could be closer to the middle. So just have that in mind. So we have a few minutes getting close to Yud Beis Tammuz, which is the day of when the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe was liberated. He was in jail on death row at the beginning, Rahman al-Islam, and he was released. He was released fully by Yudvis Thomas. So the Jews that were in Russia at that time, and in years after that, took this as a call to action, meaning he stood up against the Russian regime, the Soviet regime, and said, "No, we're going to continue practicing Yiddishkeit." And they actually put him to prison. And if any, from all calculations, it would have been like they had all. It was a very big deal.
Three Muslims, basically, was that when it first become so understands right. He insisted against Bill and agriculture because they gave it to them. And put on trial, sentenced to death, divided the people of life, just had to leave the exile, and then thrown out a bunch of the reading.
Right.
3 weeks.
Yeah, it's completely out of right.
And I think
Completely out of completely beyond any calculation.
also behind a comprehension, he actually said, "You gotta leave." He's not him. Shabbos.
Right.
And then he said,
Right. While it's happening, the previous Rebbe is standing firm in every little. Anyone that knows halacha will know. Any Rav that you ask a shaila on these questions would say, "What do you mean? Like, okay, it's not this thing is okay. This is okay." With the previous Rebbe, no, he had a thing that he's going to speak Yiddish to them, like, and these people that if for whatever reason they're in a bad mood, they could write whatever they want. These interrogators, they're gonna they write whatever they want, and then they give you the paper and say you need to sign it without you even knowing whatever whatever they're writing. So if you make a snarky comment to them, they'll say like you said something completely different. So every little thing that the previous Rebbe did was completely pikuach nefesh. Like this is not this is no jokes. And then he himself stood firm on all these things, and then he got out. So what this told the Jews is that no, Torah and mitzvahs is very, very crucial, very, very important, and this is the call of the hour that we need to stand firm. So there were many people that went, lost their lives, lost their, for sure, their living for all these things. So so here's a story that about that time. So my my great uncles, when it was in 1945, my great uncle. Okay, this might take a little overtime, so if you want, you don't have to stay. But my great uncles at 1946, there was a whole group that was trying to get Russians out of Russia with Polish passports. It was after the war, and Russia, Stalin, came up with a thing that all the Polish citizens that came to Russia because of the war are able to go back to Poland. So people were forging Polish passports, and this was a whole thing during like 1946, around that time. So my great uncles, they were teenagers at the time, so they got into one of these fake passports, as passports were families. Like let's say they would have two parents, daughter, and three sons. Things like that. The passport, a Polish passport, would have families. It wasn't one specific person; it was more a family. So then you need to come up with family members that were, people that will fit the description.
And they had a picture also, I guess.
That would fit. They didn't have pictures.
Oh.
They got out. They
Right.
had the child to family and children. They got them out. Also, that get Jews who killed the builder. They died. So builder, the full citizen, war. So they
Ah.
take.
Vilna was
That's how they got out of the.
interesting. Okay, I didn't know. Vilna was also.
Then you had the equivalent of three-court marriage. Equal marriage, only when the Villa and.
Ah.
And when you Latvia. Sometimes marriages work out, and other times, I've done Israel. I met one, I bet, I didn't hear from somebody else. He better get out like, I don't know, try to. It's like 60 sounds. We had to give the Greek court lady, with Israel, everybody got an appointment. Got there, they had to give the family appointment, so schedule appointments.
Okay, so does that mean okay? We'll say okay. So let's get to the thing. So my great uncles were part of one of these families, and they got caught at the board, meaning they didn't get out. So now they're teenagers. They're underage. So the Russian government wants to, if they weren't underage, so then the Russian government will say, like, look, these scoundrels are making a mockery of the state. They're all going to Siberia. But if they're underage, like then it looks like they're not being humane to underage, people. And it's probably not their fault. It's probably their parents that put them into this situation. So, but no one's coming to pick them up. Why? Because their parents, if their parents come to pick them up, then the parents will go to jail. Okay. So my great uncle's father, my great grandfather, he thought, like, what's going to happen if no one comes to pick them up? So then yes, they're not going to go to Siberia, but they're going to go to an orphanage because the great Soviet Republic is going to say we're humane. We need to take care of these children that their parents abandoned them. Look, their parents aren't coming to pick them up. They're abandoning these kids. So we need to come. The state needs to come take care of them. Now this orphanage is going to be indoctrinating them against Yiddishkeit. So they're going to end up not being Shemer Torah Mitzvah Chas v'Shalom. So that was the dilemma that he had. So his dilemma was like, okay, fine, no, he's going to go and pick them up. He's going to go and say that it was his fault, and he's going to go to Siberia instead. So he goes to the department, correctional facility, whatever it is, and his children got out. His older children got out, and he ended up in Siberia for 8 years. He was in Siberia. So now he comes out. Now my great uncle's younger brother, that was like 8 years old. That's my grandfather. He um he wasn't on this Polish passport, but he was much younger. But then his father was sent to Siberia for however many amount of years. So by the time his father got out of Siberia, he was already an older kid. He was already 17, 18. But he didn't go to any of the underground yeshivas there. He didn't go to yeshivas then. He went to the regular communist public school, Shkola. So by the time his father came back, his son was not Shemer Torah Mitzvah. He wasn't putting on tefillin. He looked like just a random Russian kid. So imagine he's sitting in Siberia all these years for his kids. Then he comes back and his kid is not even up to that on that level. So he sits for months, answering all his questions, having debates with him about God's existence, about Hashgacha Pratis, about the divine providence, and all these how mitzvahs are important, and how Russia is not that great of a country, or the communism is not that great of a theory. And this is going on and on. Okay. So and my grandfather says that he still remembers these conversations, like it was bringing life to him, back to the fall. But then it came to Purim of that year, and there was a Farbrengen in the city. Now this Farbrengen is obviously under, it's not everyone knows about this Farbrengen besides the buddies, the Siddim, the Lubavitcher Siddim. Okay, so they know about this Farbrengen, because if anyone knows about this Farbrengen, they're gonna know, what do you mean? You're coming together to talk about Yiddishkeit? You're against the communist great republic. So if they're not gonna be sent to jail, for sure they're gonna lose their jobs, or they're gonna lose their homes. it's for sure something not so great is gonna be happening. So no one knows about it. But then my grandfather, his father knows about it. So he finds out about this Farbrengen. So he goes to the Farbrengen. He knocks on the door, and the people answer the door, and they see a guy that looks like a random Russian. They all got freaked out. Like, who's this guy? Like, so he told them he's David Hamelech. That was his nickname back in when he used to go to school as a 7, 8 year old. That was his nickname. And these were all his buddies from
King
back
David.
in kindergarten.
King David.
Yeah. So his name is Abba David. So his nickname was David Hamelech. He said his nickname so they knew who he was. Good. So they brought him in. So they didn't say anything. All they did is just say L'chaim. He had a lot of mashgitzs Purim, especially Russians. So they had a lot of L'chaim. And it got to a point that all the L'chaim was finished. After a little bit, all the L'chaim on the table was finished. So then they're like, what do you mean? We have to get some more L'chaim. So they went outside to look for a liquor store, but it's late at night, so where are they going to look? So they go around the different streets, and they see a guy laying on the ground on the side of the street, and they're like, "Hey, do you know where the liquor store is?" And he's like, he starts, "Hey, I'm looking for the same place. Let's look for the same place." So after that Farbrengen, the next morning, my grandfather already asked his father for his tefillin. And his older brothers, so my great uncles, asked Mendel Futterfass, who's the big was the mashpia, was one of the I guess one of their mentors at the time, and for years to come, said, "What do you mean? Look at this! Look what happened just from one Farbrengen, Davidka, that was his nickname. I changed. He's already asking his father for tefillin." Mendel said, what are you being so nesmol? What are you being so overwhelmed with what happened? All that happened is it makes sense. If Farbrengen touched the spark of his neshama, so of course that's only natural for someone by Farbrengen to be touched on that level. So when I was thinking over the story, so I realized that for all these months that he was having a back and forth intellectually about if Torah is true, if mitzvahs should be done, all of that only got to a certain extent. But when he was already brought into his friendship, the friendship of his friends, he was felt part of the group. And all they didn't even have a conversation with him. He was already part of the group already. As if he was just he was just a random guy. He was just part of his the friendship of his friends. So that already brought him, okay, so now I'm already back into the fold. So good. So now I need to put on tefillin because I'm just like another guy from his class. So that's the story from
This is your grandfather?
what?
Great.
So that kid is my
okay.
grandfather.
Uh-huh.
He lives in Nachal Sachabad in Eretz Yisrael.
Wow. That hadn't happened, you might not be here.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
It's some story.
So good. So everyone should take to heart. We shouldn't have to wait for Stalin to go and throw us in the gulag to tap into our Yechidah Nefesh. We should even use it even in America. To be
Very good.
fine.
That's correct.
Who wants? We haven't done that?
Several will have. Wow, that's an interesting story. You got commensurate, you mentioned.